Who better than Chris Hirst to kick off season 4, episode 1? Chris is a former global CEO. He is a best-selling author and speaker. In fact, his third book has just been released really recently. It's called Indispensable, and it's a no bullshit guide to career success. This conversation is really meaty. I'd really encourage you to get a pen and paper to hand, or a pencil, as you will soon discover why I'm saying that. And what I love about it is he invites us into the action, the how, taking us away from merely thinking and speaking about great leadership. But what is the how? What is the doing? What is the execution? And he turned a business that, quote unquote, was unfixable into a really big success with extraordinary growth. And the questions I ask are simply this: how? How? And we learn from him really tangible things around culture. Culture becomes something really practical and really solid rather than some fleshed out nice to have. So get your pencil and paper ready and get the meat from this great conversation. Hello, Chris. It is such a pleasure to have you for episode 1 of season 4. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. So, Chris, what is the household item that you have brought in that personifies extraordinary leadership?
So my household item is very exciting. This is my household item.
Oh, I saw you holding that. It's a pencil if you're listening.
It
Okay.
is a pencil. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not just because I was holding it before and you suddenly asked me the question and I thought, shit, I haven't bought anything. I'm going to make it up. I actually did consciously go and get this pencil before the podcast. And there's an important addition. It's not just a pencil. My item is a sharp pencil.
Ooh.
Because there's nothing, I use pencils all day long. I always have a pencil to hand. I only ever really write with pencils. And there's nothing that signifies a determination to get stuck in and go and start to get some stuff done than a sharpened pencil. The sort of the woodworker with the kind of, right, here we go, got it behind the ear. And at the same time, I think there's nothing perhaps more, the opposite of that than a blunt, unsharpened pencil. So perhaps I should have 2 items. Perhaps I should have a pencil and I should have a pencil sharpener to keep, one of those ones. You've just told me that you're a millennial, so you probably aren't old enough to remember this. But in the days when the teacher had one on the desk that stuck in and there was a winder at the end, and you used to have to go and ask to use the pencil sharpener. So I think a freshly sharpened pencil is a great symbol of getting up, going and getting on and doing stuff. And for me, that's what leadership is. It is doing stuff.
So I have a pencil, and can you see how blunt it is?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
It's sitting, and it's double-ended, and both. The nib's missing out of that one.
That is a school pencil.
Lob it away. That's
sharpened at both ends. Yeah.
But it's a really interesting segue, because actually the potential of a pencil when it's sharpened, it's a pleasing moment. You have my daughter was monitor of the crayons at school a couple of years ago, and her job was to sharpen them all, but there's something about the potential of a pencil's great, but we've got to do something about it to make it work well. And that is the concept of the potential of leadership, I suppose, isn't it? Of leading life.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tool, but yeah, I think it's more than a tool, though. I think a pencil is more than a tool. I think a sharpened pencil is kind of a metaphor.
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's because I also have a propelling pencil, you see. And I did debate a propelling pencil, but in truth, I probably do actually use a propelling pencil more than I do this, because I don't have to keep sharpening it. But as a symbol, I think an actual pencil is the thing for me, because I think for me, leadership ultimately is about getting stuff done. Okay. You have to do to be an effective leader, you have to do lots of other things as well, which I somewhat dismissively refer to as talking and thinking. And talking and thinking is fine. You have to do some talking and you have to do some thinking. But talking and thinking are easy. We're going to do some talking and thinking now for an hour. It's going to be easy. Yeah. But getting up and going and getting stuff done is really hard. And I think that's what leadership is. And I think that's what we're going to sharpen pencils. Here we go.
It's the execution, isn't it? Yeah. The doing. Yeah. And actually, if we are all words and all thinking and all talking without actions, then we're talking bullshit because it's not executed.
Well, it's not necessarily bullshit, but it's certainly not going to. It literally isn't going to achieve anything because it's literally just thinking and talking.
Yes.
It's not going to butter any parsnips or whatever the expression is, you know. And for me, so when I wrote my book, we were talking before we came on about the fact that I did a degree in engineering, and I'm one of these people that enjoys equations. Equations are just beautiful things, and I thought, well, I wonder if I could write an equation for leadership, and I did. So I wrote an equation. So leadership impact equals clarity multiplied by action. Okay, that's that for me. So if you're a leader, it's about creating impact. Okay, that's what leadership is. It's about making real world impact. So how do you think about how you do that? Well, you have to basically do two things. You have to be clear, and clear means is a broad term. Depending on the circumstance, that can mean many different things. That can be strategy, visions, values, how you communicate, all those things, all of which are important.
Yep.
But they're not that difficult, despite the fact that many people will tell you they are. They're not. But none of them count for anything if action equals zero. You don't have to have done a degree in engineering to work out that any number multiplied by zero equals zero. And for me, one of the key reasons that people fail as leaders or fail even in their careers is not for want of thinking, it's for want of doing.
So that's a bugbear of mine, the doing, but how, I mean, there's countless books written on how to do different things differently, you know, accumulate impact through the small things you do. Before we come on to that, you've got a degree in engineering, you've been a CEO of businesses, you're a speaker, you've got a best-selling book. Where for you, if we dive into the places that I call ordinary, where was the moment where the ordinary became not good enough and you pivoted in your career, in your approach to leadership?
Well, I'm not claiming that I am extraordinary, but
No.
I would say that for me, ordinary, I've never thought, oh, you know, ordinary's fine. I've never been that person. I've always wanted to be really good at the thing that I'm trying to do. And sometimes I end up being quite good at it. Sometimes I try quite hard to be good at something and I stay shit at it. But I don't know if there was ever a sort of psychological moment where I thought, okay, well, ordinary is not enough for me. I want to be extraordinary. But there was certainly a moment, I think, where I had a kind of a tipping point, a point of inflection in my life and my career where I went from being ordinary. Let's say that I didn't want to be ordinary before, but I was,
Yeah.
and I managed to go from. In fact, to be honest, ordinary, I went from failing. I went from doing a bad job and really thinking I've kind of screwed my career here to going to a place where I transformed my life, to be honest. And to be honest, I transformed the lives of quite a lot of other people as well, because I found myself as CEO of a failing business and we transformed it. And we dramatically and radically transformed it into one of the best in the country in its sector.
Before, I'd love to know about how and what happened in that space, but just before, what would you be happy to share parts of the story around where you thought you'd really failed and messed up your career? What was going on there?
Yeah, I'm very happy to. So essentially the story, when I was 32, so I was very young, but I was preposterously ambitious.
Yep.
So I was made managing director of this unfixable, and that's not my word, that was how it was talked about in the trade press, unfixable ad agency. And I was one of a team of 5 people. So I had a boss, a CEO, who'd been hired to hire this new team of which I was part, and we all saw ourselves as rock stars. I kind of knew some of the others. I knew them all, either by reputation or I'd worked with them in the past. And this was my dream job. And it sounds like a weird thing to say, to go, well, hang on, your dream job was to go and work at an utterly crap business. And it was a dream job because I remember looking around at the others and thinking, this is going to be great. This is going to make our careers. I mean, everybody before us just wasn't doing it right. Anyway, guess what? Nemesis follows hubris. I mean, within 6 months, the guy that hired me had been fired. Within a couple of years, all of the others I joined with had gone, and by the way, all gone on to absolutely stellar careers. I stayed. I sort of stayed, partly through fear, partly through inertia, partly I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I found myself still in this business 6-7 years later. So now I'm no longer in my early 30s. I'm in my late 30s, nearly 40.
Wow.
I joined as a rock star to turn this business around. 6 years later, the business is still a shit business.
Yeah.
And I'd been hired as part of the solution, and now as part of the problem. No question, nobody was going to hire me. So what was I going to do, basically? I mean, was I brave enough to not just step out, but to step out and step back? I mean, literally step back in my career in order to try and restart. And it was, I'd been passed over continuous, I think 3 times. New CEOs came and went. Each time I was passed over. And, so I sort of got, I mean, I'm shortening, it sounds like I'm not, but I actually am shortening the story. But basically, I kind of got lucky. And the guy that I worked for, he'd come in as yet another new boss of mine. His boss retired, and he got offered her job. And I don't think he really wanted to take it because he hadn't been there very long. But they said to him, well, either you take it or we're giving it to somebody else. And so, I mean, what do? You take the job, right? So he did, and he took a chance on me. So suddenly I find myself, after 7 years of failure at this business, successive leadership teams, terrible, shitty stuff, suddenly I'm in charge, basically. And then the question is, okay, right, what am I going to do?
Wow. So I'd love to know, because, we work with lots of businesses, leaders are listening. What was the reason? What were the ingredients that were making this business unfixable and so problematic?
So that's a great question. So I remember standing in front of the company, about 250 people when I took over as CEO.
Yep.
And I remember standing there and thinking to myself, I asked literally that question, why are we a shitty business?
Yeah.
Because it was an advertising agency. There's hundreds, thousands, I mean, in the UK alone, thousands of advertising agencies. And where we were, you said you used to live in East London. We were in East London. And I thought, well, hang on, there's agencies all around us. There's an agency in the 250 yards away from where we are, and they're a great business. What have they got that we don't have?
Yeah.
Because they are just a building with people in it.
Yeah.
We are just a building with people in it. What makes their building with people in it better than our building with people in it? And it's a really obvious question without, what's the answer? And the only answer I'd ever come up with, and in fact, I think the only answer to the question, and by the way, this applies to the vast majority of businesses, they're all the same. The only answer is talent and culture. Those are the only two things. The only difference was talent and culture. There was nothing else. Everything else was cosmetic. People used to say to us, well, your reputation's so bad, you need to change the name. And we thought we needed to change the name as well. We were like, oh, well, we've got to change the name. The name is the problem. Bollocks, the name wasn't the problem. We never changed the name. All that stuff is just cosmetic. It's nonsense. It's talent and culture. All businesses are trying to do a common thing better than their competition. All businesses.
That's so brilliantly simple and profound.
And no business, almost no business. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Google, but you can ignore those kind of businesses. No business is unique. And so the question just is, how are you going to do that common thing better than your competitors? Simon Sinek wrote a book called Why. Oh, it starts with why.
Yeah.
Made a lot of money from it. Great. I think the question is always, everywhere, is how. That's it. And to me, that's the only question that ever matters. How? You want to be the best business in the world? Okay, great. That's brilliant. Okay. You want the economy to grow. Okay, great. Brilliant. We all do. Okay, how?
Yeah.
Are you prepared to do the things you have to do to achieve that? And most people and most businesses aren't. They're just not prepared to do the things they have to do.
So when you were CEO, is that an inflection point? Is that when things changed for you, or was that
So
still part of the
no, I think
difficult
that,
story?
well, the inflection point, I suppose, was when we finally, the inflection point. Yes, I mean, I didn't know that it was going to be an inflection point at that point.
Yeah.
But the inflection point was, I suppose, I took over CEO, and within 3 years, 3 years, we were agency of the year in the UK. We doubled in size. By the way, I took over in 2008-9. So that was in the middle of the 30% of the people in advertising in London lost their jobs in 2008, 2009.
Wow.
30%. And we doubled in size, quadrupled in profit, with the agency of the year in 2014. And I still meet people now. In fact, very often, I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, and somebody said this to me. People very regularly who I don't know very well, or I haven't seen for 10 years, say to me, those 3 or 4 years were the best 3 years of my life.
No.
Right? Of my life. Not of my career, of my life.
Chris, that's
It was an
amazing.
extraordinary thing. It was an extraordinary period.
So you know what question I'm going to ask you now. How?
So, so once you ask the question, we're just trying to do a common thing better than our competitors. So how are we going to do it? And you say we're buildings full of people, so talent and culture. So I think one of the things with realizing that the difference is talent and culture, I think that's both intimidating and liberating. One of the things for me to understand about leadership is about taking control. And sometimes when I say that, people think I mean over people, and I don't. I mean over circumstances and events.
Yeah.
Effective leaders impose themselves on events, and poor leaders, events impose themselves on them, essentially. And so in order to impose yourselves on events, you have to work out what are the factors that are within your control, because the things that aren't in your control, by definition, they're not in your control, nothing you do about them. So talent culture. So I, at least at that point, knew 2 things with absolute certainty. I didn't know exactly what we were going to do, but I was very clear what we weren't, because the one thing I did have was I had 6 years of failure. Okay, I had 6 years of thinking, this is how not to do it.
Yeah.
Which didn't necessarily tell me how to do it. It just told me some ways of not doing it. And so I knew 2 things with absolute clarity. The first was that I knew we were going to have to make mistakes to get to where we were going to get to. I knew things were going to have to go wrong, but I was absolutely determined that we weren't going to repeat the same mistakes. So we were going to make, and I was pretty clear what those were, or at least some of those. And the second was that and I think this is true of many, if not all businesses, I believed that the smallest individual element of our company was not the individual, it was the team. I think the team is the small, it's like, and we were talking about, weirdly, this is going to sound strange, we were talking about quantum physics before we started recording.
We were.
And in the same way an atom is made up of its constituent parts. I think that's how organizations are. Organizations are made up of blocks of teams. And so I was absolutely, utterly, and totally determined that the first thing we were going to do is we were going to build an indivisibly tight team at the top of the business. And my job as a CEO was to build and sustain that team. And if we could build an indivisibly tight team at the top of the business, then we had a reasonable chance of being able to build layers of indivisibly tight teams down through the business. And what drives businesses forward is the performance of their teams.
Yeah.
And that's why leadership is so important, because leadership is about our ability to enable others to do things they wouldn't if we weren't there. And from very early on in our career, it's that drives our careers forward, not what we can achieve on our own. And so, we were a team business, and so we had to build high-performing teams. And I'll shut up in a minute. And then essentially our strategy was our culture. I mean, that was it. We said it's talent and culture. Culture beats talent. Talent is one of those flabby words. What does it really mean? But culture isn't. Culture is concrete. And so we set about creating a culture that enabled us to win. And, we did.
So that culture is the indivisibly tight teams?
Well, ultimately, I think that is what it. Yes, I think ultimately, I think culture is there's a sort of a symbiotic relationship between having a strong team and having a strong culture. You know, you can't have a strong team with a crappy culture.
No.
And if you have a crappy culture, it's quite hard to have a strong team. But I think people shouldn't overthink it, right? I mean, a strong team is a team that trusts each other and has each other's back and is aligned on what they're trying to all achieve. They're aligned, absolutely aligned, by the way, on what success looks like for them. They're able to disagree without falling out. I mean, these are the things that strong teams do, but they don't just happen. You know, you have to actively invest to make that happen. And most leaders don't. They just sort of hope it'll all be fine.
So if I actively invest, that word active again harkens back to that thing of action, of doing, of not just talking and thinking. It's the action, it's the how.
Yeah.
Can we dive into some of those mechanics?
Yeah.
What are they? What are the actionable investments we can do to create teams that are tight and high performing?
So I think the first thing is I talked about impact equals clarity multiplied by action. Okay, so the first thing is clarity. The first thing to have a successful team is you have to ensure that everybody is clear in that team. Some basic questions that, again, often people aren't. So are we all absolutely clear what success looks like, what we're all here to do, what one thing we are here to do? One, are we all clear how we are going to go about doing that? I guarantee you that most people listen to this, most leaders will assume that their individual members of their team know the answers to those questions and are aligned on the answers to those questions. And I guarantee you they're not. Because people just assume
and they'll be different.
They'll be different. They'll be different. They'll be absolutely different. People pursuing that, which is one of the reasons, I don't want to digress too much here, but that alignment, I think teams are like, you know, like iron filings around a magnet, right? You know, you put a magnet and the iron filings all line up in a circle. That's how good teams work, right? And good teams, you know, leadership are different ways of talking about leadership. Leadership's about deployment of resource. If you had unlimited resources, which are basically time and money, okay, basically, in business. If you had unlimited resource, you don't need leaders because eventually you're going to get there anyway because you've got unlimited time and resource. You haven't ever anywhere got unlimited resource. So how do you deploy your resources to achieve best results? That's what leadership's about. And that's why that clarity matters, because it's not that people aren't working hard. They might be working very hard, but unless they're all working hard in the same direction, you get a massive dilution of that team's performance, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why I think hybrid working and working from home isn't as effective, because people get very annoyed when I say this, and it's not because I don't think people are working hard. I just think it's harder, not impossible, but it's harder to ensure you have that absolute alignment of where we're spending our time and effort, particularly in big, complicated organizations. I'm not talking about organizations if there's 5 or 6 people in the company, that's different. So I think that alignment is critically important. And then I think the difference between great teams, average teams, and poor teams is culture, the culture in that team. I talk, you know, like I say, our strategy for that business was our culture. And I talk to people a lot about cultures, even very senior people, but people right the way through organizations. Everybody listening to this will, you know, have a point of view on culture. But what most people do, even CEOs, when I talk to them, will say, oh, yeah, or think, I can see, often they don't say it. I can see people thinking it. They'll go, oh, yeah, I know culture's important, but, you know, oh, man, it's kind of like, I can't quite see it. And it's kind of bigger than me, and it takes ages to change. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all the proper serious business stuff, and then maybe we'll have an offsite. And my point about culture is, culture, if you run a team whether you run a team of 3 people, whether you run a team of 30,000 people, culture isn't bigger than you. Culture is literally you. Your behavior sets the culture in your team. You have agency, you're a leader, take up your authority and create the culture in your team that you believe you want to create. And that culture is primarily determined by your personal behaviors as the leader.
Define for me culture. You kind of just did.
Culture for me is the environment a leader creates in order for their team to outperform. That's what organizational culture does. Organization culture isn't being nice. I mean, you can then have a debate about how, as we said, how is the thing.
Yeah.
But culture isn't Pilates at lunchtime, fresh fruit. You know, culture is people think about it as a soft, squishy thing.
Yeah.
And culture isn't. Culture is a hard physical thing. You go into an environment and the culture in that environment has a huge impact on your behavior, whether you're aware of it or not. And so it's a very concrete physical thing. And therefore, as a leader, you need to, if you want your team to perform, you need to pay careful attention to creating the environment that enables your team to do that. And again, it's none of this is, if you want to know, the other thing with culture is that, and I used to think this, the other thing with culture is, obviously you have good cultures and bad cultures. And obviously there's an infinite amount of ways to have a shitty culture, obviously.
Yeah.
But there's a whole massive industry of consultants and whatever, management consultants and whatever, who will also tell you there's an infinite amount of ways to have a great culture. There's not. There's one way to have a great culture. All great cultures are basically the same.
Go on.
Because all people are the same, right?
Yep.
So if you want to understand what a great culture is, a great culture is high trust. We trust each other. We're supportive of each other. It's high levels of autonomy. So people want autonomy. People want to work, people want to work and problem solve in a way that suits them.
Yeah.
That's 3. 4, great communication. Great cultures communicate really effectively with each other. And by the way, I don't just mean top down. I mean top down, bottom up, side to side. I mean, people are free to say whatever they like, as long as they're not obviously rude. I mean, you've got to be respectful, but people are free to talk to anybody they like within that team or that organization. That's 4. Great cultures are like pot plants. They don't just happen. You've got to nurture them and water them. You can't just like once a year send an email out saying, "Oh, here's the culture," and that's it. You've got to continually reinvest in it to make sure to make sure the behaviors that you've all agreed are consistent and held to. They apply the behaviors that you agree, which we've just talked about, autonomy, trust, support, they apply to everybody. That's really important. A culture is as strong as its weakest link. If you decide that it only applies to some people some of the time, then, that it doesn't count. And, if you do those 6 things, you're going to have a great culture. I'm telling you now. Now, some people could say, well, there might be another one I'm going to add in. Okay, fine. Or there's one of those that I think is less important. Okay, fine. But you do those 6 things in your team, you're going to have an absolutely brilliant team. If people feel trusted, supported, communicate well with each other, people are able to work autonomously, and that's a big challenge for leaders because a lot of leaders find that difficult to do.
Yeah.
And you invest in that. I mean, even if you just sit down with your team and say, what would be a great culture in this team? How would people like to work so that we're all going to feel more trusted and supported within our team? What would that look like to everybody? I mean, people just don't have those conversations.
Well, it's funny. Some of the things you've said about the how-to is quite simply the basic questions.
Yes.
And that's where I think there's such a power in effective coaching, and that being a massive tool in great leadership, because it's helping you unlock your team's needs, goals, the success by being on the same page, but asking those basic questions.
Yes.
So I guess a push for anyone listening is actually what's your questioning like? And, what are the answers you're getting, and what are you doing on the back of those answers? But help me understand something, Chris. When you were working in that business for 6 years, and then you got the CEO role and you transformed everything in 3 years, what I want to go into that space of like, what did you just start asking these questions? What did you do?
So we did two things, really, in terms of, okay, what do we actually do?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's all great. What did you actually do?
Yeah.
So,
But what did you actually do?
I think we did two very tangible things. The first is I remember really clearly, we had this meeting, leadership team meeting, you know, one of those like, let's go to like a country hotel for an offsite.
Yes.
And so we went and did that, as leadership teams all want to do. And actually, unusually, ours was quite useful. So that's quite that's quite rare, and it was useful because we asked ourselves. I don't know what we did for most of the time, but we asked ourselves two questions. Question one, we said to ourselves, was, what, if anything, are we the best at right now? And this was a really easy question to answer because we all knew, nobody was in denial. That was the one good thing. We all knew that we weren't the best at anything. There was nothing that we were the best at. In compared to competitors.
That's such a great audit.
Yeah, there was nothing that we're the best at. And then we asked ourselves the question that I honestly think everybody should ask themselves right now.
Go on.
And that question was, if we could choose anything, of all the things, you know, all businesses do lots of things. If we could choose any one thing to be the best at, what would it be? And this is a great question. And I think it's a critical question if you're trying to change a business. I mean, I wrote a book about leading change. I think this is a a really important question.
Yeah.
And what most ad agencies do in answer to that question, but you can extend this analogy to lots of other businesses. An ad agency, for those that don't know anything about advertising, their product is making adverts. Okay, that's not that surprising. That's the product. We make adverts for clients. And so what most people do is they say, we're going to make better ads. What do we want to be the best at? We want to be the best at making ads. That's what every single advertising agency I'd ever worked in, and it's still the case everywhere now. That's the answer to every problem. And I think that's true of many businesses. Our business has a problem. What do we want to be the absolute best at? We want to be the best at making the thing that we make.
Yeah.
The problem with that answer, I always found, was that it's not that people weren't already trying to do that.
Right.
It's not that people weren't working hard in our business. And it's not that people didn't care in our business. They did. And so I always felt, well, just standing up in front of the company and saying, can everybody just go and be a bit more creative, please? What does anybody do with that? I mean,
right.
Oh, okay, because I wasn't trying. Oh, right. Oh, so the answer is I just go and try a bit harder. That's
just going to be a bit better.
Our business strategy is to just go and try harder. So we didn't say that. So what we said was, if we could wave a magic wand and be the best at one thing, we would be the best at winning new clients.
Ooh.
That's the way that consultancy businesses work, for those who don't know, is they're very simple businesses. The way you grow, every business has to grow. The way you grow is you win more clients than you lose. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're there to do. We're there to run a business. So what we're going to do, and the hardest thing in business is finding new clients. So if we could be the best at that, we figured, then everything else is easier than that. Not easy, but easier. And also, we're succeeding as a business. And if you're succeeding as a business, boy, oh boy, do good things come your way. So we took that and that objective, let's say, it wasn't a strategy, it was an objective, and we took it extremely seriously. And you know, like an absolute obsession.
Wow.
We said and there's this concept called Schwerpunkt. Sounds very pretentious. There's this concept called Schwerpunkt. Are you familiar with it?
No, tell me.
The people that aren't. So I didn't know this at the time, by the way. This is subsequently, but it's what we did. So there's a guy called Carl von Clausewitz who was I bet you didn't know we were going here.
This is catchy. I'm really going to remember these words.
Who was a Prussian general in the Napoleonic Wars.
Wow.
And he wrote a book called On War. And he was the guy that first coined the phrase total war, for example, and the expression war is politics by other means. So that was Clausewitz's if to the world. But he also had this expression, Schwerpunkt. And Schwerpunkt, it doesn't translate into English, but it means point of maximum pressure. So his point was that what armies should do is, rather than push equally hard, or, they used to have big long lines of armies in those days and they'd push and fight against each other. And he said, rather than do that, what you need to do is deploy a disproportionate amount of your resource at a point that is particularly favorable to you, or particularly a point of weakness for your opponent. Deploy a disproportionate amount of your resources there, and that will be your Schwerpunkt and you will win, point of maximum focus. And this is a really, I think, a really important and useful concept for people leading any sort of team, any sort of business. Because leadership and business is like drinking from a fire hydrant. You have an unlimited amount of demands on your time, an unlimited amount of tasks that you're supposed to be doing. But the truth is, you can only do, virtually no business can be really good at more than one thing.
Right.
And so what are you going to decide that one thing is going to be? And for us, we decided our Schwerpunkt was going to be become brilliant at winning new clients. And we sort of said to ourselves, you know what? We don't know whether we're going to succeed at this or not, but what we want to be is, we want those good agencies, our good competitors.
Yeah.
We want to get to a point where when they see us on the list, because we're shit, they're going to go, oh, we don't mind losing to like one of those other good ones. That's not like embarrassing. I mean, we'd prefer to win, but if we don't win, we don't mind losing to one of them because they're good too. But bloody hell, I don't want to lose to that lot because they're crap. I mean, that's really embarrassing. So we kind of were just all in on this, and in the end, and we became a machine. I mean, it's a game, and we learned the rules, and we practiced, and we hired for it. We organized our entire culture around it. We incentivized against it. We built meeting rooms specially to do meetings in. We were obsessive about it. And what's interesting is, like that's the only way we doubled in size. The only way you double in size is to win more clients.
Yeah.
But that's it. But also, guess what? The quality of our creative work was transformed, because suddenly we have a whole better people come and join us, because we've got momentum, we've got money to invest. And also, creativity is a very, it's an art, it's not a science. So the way that you create better advertising on average is you have more opportunities to do good. You have more briefs. Yeah. Because some briefs just won't work out. But the more you do, the more chance you have of doing some great stuff.
So you've said a word there that I think is really pivotal and key, that you said we became obsessive.
Yeah.
And there's something about high-performing teams becoming obsessive. It's that thing of just be better, just perform harder. It's the obsession, intrinsically, that we're wanting within our talent to drive great results. But it centers around that. I'm going to botch the word up. What's it called?
Schwerpunkt.
Schwerpunkt. Schwerpunkt. Exactly. And it's so that Schwerpunkt is a really key thing here. So my dad's a businessman, and he always says focus. And is the money rattling around in the till? Those are the kind of two business things I've got from him. It's all well and good doing all sorts of things, but you're getting promises of clients, but he will always say, is the money rattling in the till? And I think that's such a great audit, a bit like your audit of what are we good at? Nothing. What are we the best at? Nothing. Taking a true audit, because I do see what I worry about in the business spaces I'm in my experience, is leaders can often judge themselves and the performance of the company or their teams by two things. One is the bottom line, or their targets. But even if they're bleak, they judge it by a second thing, which is their intention. And that's always dangerous, because we all have good intentions to be better, to do better. But I know it'll be better next year. We've just got to try harder. We've just got to X, Y, Z. And we're judging ourselves, or we're auditing ourselves on what we're thinking and talking about. but actually it's this actionable piece. So, and that focus, how would you cut through anyone listening now, or if you're in a business where the performance isn't where it needs to be, people are a little bit just underperforming, we're wanting to see people get obsessed, what would you say is the key starting point for a leader in that space?
So sorry, just to clear the question. Okay, so you're in charge of a team or an organization, and the organization
You want them to get
not doing
obsessed.
great. So
you want them to get obsessed and focused. What are the things that a leader needs to do today to start that process?
So I think that leadership. Well, I got two thoughts. I'll share them. I'll share them both with you. The first, I had this thing about belief. Okay, so I think there's sort of 3 tiers of belief in successful teams and successful organizations. The first is, I guess, kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, like maybe, I was going to say the spiritual, that's probably a bit, purpose, belief in purpose. So first level of belief is we all have to believe in that what we're doing collectively is a worthwhile endeavor. So we have to believe that what we're doing is worthwhile in some shape or form.
Which harkens back a little bit to Simon Sinek with the why, that
Yes,
there is
absolutely.
a place for that.
I don't disagree with, yes, I don't disagree with this. I think why is absolutely right. Yeah, why are we doing it? So first is we have to have this collective belief about a worthwhile endeavor. Why? Okay, let's call it that. The second layer of belief is we all have to believe in essentially the strategy. We all have to believe in the way we are going to achieve that. And that, once you start to unpick that, of course, that means that people have to understand the starters. So do I even understand what the team or the organization's plan for getting there is? And do I believe in it? Do I think this is going to work?
Yeah.
And the third level of belief is personal, essentially. So each individual, do I believe that I am working in an environment, that I have the tools and the support and the training and whatever else it is that I need for me to effectively play my part in that journey? And so, in good organizations, good teams, those 3 beliefs in some shape or form are in place.
So just to be clear and connecting the dots together, earlier when you said the smallest component of a company, a building with people, is the team, but there is also this space for the individual.
Oh, sorry. Teams are made up of individuals, but my point is that the way the organization is, the way it's like Lego bricks.
Yeah.
People have to understand their position. People, all of us throughout our careers, exist at the same time, usually in 3 different phases all at once. We have people that work for us, so we are a leader.
Yeah.
We are a peer, so we are a team member. We are members of teams that we don't lead.
Yeah.
And we have a boss, so we are an employee. So at any point, sorry, not at any point, at all points through our career, pretty well, except for the first 12 months, we exist in those states all at the same time. And that's true of the people that work for us as well. So it's more that I talk about the team being the indivisible unit, because I want people to understand that the thing that drives their careers forward is not what they achieve on their own, it's what they enable other people to achieve. And that doesn't, a great team, so we're jumping around a bit here, but I think a great team has an alignment between the team fulfilling its objective, whatever those might be, and the people in the team believing and feeling that if the team fulfills its objective, they, in some shape or form, move closer towards them fulfilling their own personal ambitions as well.
There's I love that. And actually, I didn't nod to it before, but that word indivisible, which I haven't, isn't a word in my repertoire actually,
Huh?
but it now
There you
certainly
go. So
is.
that's two words. That's Schwerpunkt and indivisible.
Yeah. No,
You're
it's a
welcome.
cracking word. I heard a great thing last week. 3 people were asked what they were doing. The first person said, I'm bricklaying. The second person said, I'm building a wall. The third person said, I'm building a cathedral. And it's
Right.
this thing of like the various components, they're all
Mm.
part of the same thing, but they're
Yes.
different applications at each point.
Yes.
But actually, they're all are true. But it is this kind of collective, indivisible thing of what are we doing and our perspective of which part are we doing. And we all want to make sure that we all know that at times we are building this cathedral, but we might have to bricklay as well. And there's a different application, isn't there, of your mindset of which part of the process we're in.
Well, it's that same analogy, sort of from the opposite end of the telescope, if you like, is that probably apocryphal? I don't know.
Yes.
JFK visiting NASA and seeing a guy in the corridor with a broom or a mop or something, and he says to the guy, "Oh, so what do you do around here?" And the guy says, "I'm putting a man on the moon."
That's so great.
You know, so
So great.
that for me is just a great example. That's a great way of understanding that in a really successful, well-run organization,
Yes.
everybody understands what their specific individual part and task is, but they also understand how them doing a great job of their task ladders directly up to the organization fulfilling its goals. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think very often in many organizations, people go to work, they work very hard, but we spend a lot of time on autopilot, and people see their job as an end in itself. Okay, so I get my job is in itself. I'm doing a good job if I'm delivering, you know, I don't know, I'm counting these beans successfully.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, people that are more successful, the most successful people, never lose sight of how what they are doing is contributing toward the ultimate, you know, priority projects or ambitions for the team or the organization. That's what
Like
matters.
we're going to become the best at
Like
getting
new
new
business.
clients.
So exactly. So nobody in the company could have possibly doubted that that's what we were
our
trying
goal
to do. Yeah.
It's there's a great proverb that says, without vision, the people perish. And it's that, isn't it? It's that without the Schwerpunkt, then actually we will get to a kind of glass ceiling of performance, because it's, why are we here? What's the reason? What's the collective purpose of this?
Yes.
Yeah. There's so much here, Chris. There's so much I want to dive into. Just before we bring it into land, a big question, but as short an answer as possible because of time. Hybrid working.
Yeah.
I just want to nod to it. When and I agree with you. I think that it does, unfortunately, by the nature of it, and I agree with it. I think it creates flexibility. It's not that I'm anti it, but I think in terms of tight teams, how can we do that if we're not geographically with one another? You know, body language is a huge part of connection, and we're kind of lacking that on Teams and on phones and emails. So how do we do that? What would be your stab at an answer to resolve this issue?
Excuse me. So we actually didn't use the word hybrid working, but we did sort of a version of this when we created this culture. And you said at the start, all of your best ideas you stole from somebody else, same as me. Maybe you didn't say that, but anyway, roughly that's what you said. And
I never said that. They're all my own.
Okay. Okay. Unlike you, all of my best ideas I stole from somebody else. How about that?
Thanks.
So we did some work with Clive Woodward, the guy, the World Cup winning coach, stuff like that. And he has this idea of what he calls teamship.
Yeah.
And this is a really interesting idea that I would urge everybody, well, however you want to work. I just think everybody should work like this. So what we did was we said our company's made up of teams, and we're not going to tell people how to work. Well, we have some guide rules, but broadly speaking, we're interested in outcomes. We're not interested in how people get to those outcomes. And so each team, and we also knew that guess what? People had complicated lives before COVID as well. And so we knew that different people in different teams, needed to work in different ways to fit work into their lives and their lives into work. So we said, you guys should meet as a team and have that conversation. How do you want to work in a way that suits you all, that enables you all to still be a brilliant, high-performing team and contribute fully and brilliantly to the thing we're trying to do as an organization? But we're not interested in presenteeism. We know that people have to pick the kids up for school. We know that, frankly, we also, we know that people wake up sometimes and they're hungover, literally, whatever. You guys work it out how you want to work. And as long as you all agree it between you, and of course, your team delivers the things we want, we don't care. And so we called this teamship, and teams did that. The teams met and they talked about it and they agreed how they wanted to work. And it wasn't just about working patterns and hours, it was how they deal with conflict, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And this for me is how hybrid working should work really well. If it's seen as something that is just based around some amount of days I can spend at home versus amount of days I can spend in the office, I don't think that's a good pattern. And like I'm generalizing. In some organizations, if it works brilliantly and your organization is doing brilliantly, do whatever you like. I'm not telling you how to do it.
No.
But if you're trying to change a company, if you've got big ambitions and you're not there yet, you need people to be having really, really effective, high-performing relationships with each other. And that means they have to have conversations about how they're going to work and how they're going to interact with each other. Yeah. And one of the challenges with hybrid working is if people are all in different places at different times, then that really makes it more difficult, let me say that, for that team to really perform to its maximum potential. And it also makes it more difficult for people to have the kind of conversations and all that sort of stuff they need to have. If that team have an adult conversation with each other about how they want to work in ways that allow their lives to fit around work and also still perform brilliantly, off you go, crack on. That to me is the missing conversation in many teams when it comes to hybrid working.
Do you know, it harkens back to this basic human skill of having conversations.
Yes.
And understanding how to hold the space for these conversations rather than a quick question on the fly with one person, another person, thinking we're on the same page that we've done it. We haven't. For example, what I love with this world we're in of leadership and development and performance, it's all transferable into family. So I have 4 kids, about to move house. I think they all know what's happening because I've told them all loads, but inevitably one wasn't listening. Inevitably one has forgotten. And so you can never assume that your output of asking questions and things that have been said are locked in. The only way that it works is when you sit down and go, how are we going to work this? What do you need? What do you need? We write it down. We feedback and go, hey, I heard you say that. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Another child will say, oh, yes, I heard that too. So that we're all on the same page of this rather difficult space of moving house and all 4 children in different spaces in their lives. And it's the same in team. It's these proper, the word proper is probably too thin. It's creating space, which people are too busy to do. They think they're too busy to do. And having a reverence for actually to get your bottom line, to get money rattling in the till, to have high performing teams means you have to have these conversations and create a space to make sure that people are really feeding into it so that you can then pivot and make alternate changes, just like you did in your company when you went away and asked those 2 questions.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that all team leaders, parents perhaps as well, but all team leaders should have these conversations with their teams. They should talk to. They don't. Too many leaders talk to their teams about the functional things they need doing. Have you done that report yet or whatever? But those outcomes, I'm trying to be disparaging, but they're not usually that difficult. Okay. Yeah. They might feel it in the moment, but they're not. And what's difficult? What is really difficult is that at work, and this is why leadership is difficult, is it's the human aspects of it, but they're not complicated. Is the point? No. And I think just a lot of people would be more effective leaders, and therefore, really importantly, have more successful careers. If you want to have a successful career, learn to be an effective leader.
Yeah.
I mean, period. If, would be more effective leaders if they just had more conversations with their team about some of the things we've talked about here, about how they work, what are the behaviors that are important to us as a team, what are the barriers, how do I as a leader help you achieve the things that we all want to achieve. And sometimes those things might be work related, but sometimes those might be, I'm struggling to fit my family. I've got various family issues that I'm trying to fit around work. But I'm, but I want to be part of this. How do we make that work?
But which, as we land, that's concrete. That's culture. Those conversations are concrete, tangible things.
Culture.
That is culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm now going to ask you to say to end, but you've kind of already said it. So you feel free to kind of nod back to it or add. But if you could give one sentence of hope or challenge with leaders for today, with the trends you've seen recently, what would be your one sentence of
Can I ask a point of clarification, because I'm pedantic? Do you mean, when you say hope, do you mean giving them hope that they can achieve the thing they want to achieve?
Yeah. But actually, funny enough, can we scrap the word hope? Because I get annoyed with the word hope, so I can't believe I even said it.
Okay,
hope, because people often think hope's a strategy, and it's not. It's just
to be fair, many strategies could be summarized as
hope. No, 100%. I see it all the time, and I always go, guys, is this your strategy? Because it just seems like it's hope. Yeah. However, St. Augustine says hope has two daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are and courage to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I like that bit of hope. But when hope's a strategy, it is it doesn't work. So let me rephrase it. What's something of encouragement or challenge that you think leaders need to hear at the moment in business?
So in my encouragement, I suppose I'm going to go for, I think that most people, by most, I mean the vast majority of people in leadership positions don't really see themselves or behave. And to be fair, they're not treated that way by the organizations they're in either, as leaders. And I urge you, if you have people you're responsible for, you are a leader. Leadership is difficult, but it's not complicated. And it's not like one of the, it's not like leadership skills aren't like these things that at some point when I've got a big enough title, I should probably quickly do a course. Yeah. Your ability to lead effectively is the path for you to have the career you want. So take up your authority and take the development of that skill, make it your number one personal priority.
Wow. I love that. I know it's funny, the word authority, we often smart against it. Some people, it can be a little bit of a dirty word, but I think it's a really powerful word, because if you do it with kindness and respect for people, you holding that authority can really make the team. Well,
I know you want to finish, but I think one of the things that exists in the world at the moment, I'm sorry, you just said it there as well, is we're encouraged a lot these days to be leaders. We've got to be kind, and we've got to be empathetic, and we've got to be all these lovely things. Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Be kind and empathetic. That's all great. Yeah. But what people often hear when they hear those words is they hear that actually I need to be soft and gentle and let everybody else have their say, and not be too forceful. What the people that work for you want is they want strong, determined, decisive, clear, action-orientated leadership. They don't want you, that whole leaders eat last, fine. They don't want you sitting at the back. They want you, well, when things are easy, sit at the back and let everybody, go on, fill your boots. When things are hard, they want you at the front. They want you there saying, I know where we're going. I know how we're going to get there. I've got your backs. Follow me. Yeah. And say it however you like, But that's what
100%.
people want. People want you to be strong. And so take up your authority and do it.
I love that. And also, I was going to say, what would be your sort of 60-second manifesto for extraordinary leadership? But I kind of think,
There you
mic
go.
drop, that's it. Like, take up your authority and lead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, it has been so rich. I feel like I could write 3 books on the back of this
I
conversation.
have written 3 books.
Well, fancy
There
that.
you go.
Well, we will put all of your books and your handles in the link, and definitely encourage people to get in touch with you as well, doing speaking, consulting, etc. But Chris, it has been such a rich conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I hope you found that conversation as rich as I did. I think something that I love he called upon was this concept of your authority as a leader. And I know in other conversations I've had on the pod, we've talked about taking your space and holding your space as a leader in your own life, with your family, with your businesses, with your teams. And sometimes when we push the pedal on empathy, integrity, psychological safety, diversity and inclusion, which are all really important for a healthy culture, we sometimes forsake this other pedal, which is taking authority, being decisive, finding that central point of mass, of vision, of driving force to create the obsession. And I love how Chris really calls that into sharp focus alongside those other qualities we need in leadership. Do follow Chris on all his media platforms. You'll see them on the links below. And get a copy of his new book, Indispensable. And also don't forget, you can get a copy of my book, The Extraordinary Leader, via my website, dollywaddell.com. And if you would like me to come and work with your teams or your leaders and help infiltrate fantastic, strong, tangible culture, please do reach out. Thanks for listening.